Draymond Green has been suspended for stomping on Sabonis. I said yesterday I thought this was the right call, and I understand some people disagree. But the reality is you are judged based not only on what you did, but on the history of what you've done. And Draymond Green has consistently acted out on the basketball court over much of the last decade. And he's been suspended multiple times, most memorably when he got suspended in the series against the Cleveland Cavaliers, which helped to allow the Cavs to come back from a 3-1 series deficit and get a championship for Cleveland and LeBron James. Draymond Green has consistently put himself in these positions. And so he's not being judged as a guy who's 100% without fault in the past. We all are judged based on our prior history, not only what we're doing in the moment. I think it was the right call for the NBA. I want to say thanks. OutKick set some incredible March records for audience. And this is from ComScore. If you're not familiar with how things work on the internet, ComScore is a universally utilized counting mechanism, right? It's kind of like Nielsen for online. And we are the fastest growing site among big sites, right? Like that's sites that are top 20, top 25-ish. And over the last March, we had our second best month ever. We had a 376% year-over-year growth. This is from the press release, ComScore. 376% growth over last March. We had 55 million platform minutes, which was up 289%. And, I mean, it was the highest month ever of social media interactions, 352% increase on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And our video views on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube were up 415% versus last March. So we are rolling and dominant, and I couldn't appreciate more you guys for being supporters of OutKick. And I also couldn't appreciate more the staff that we have working super hard every single day. When you talk about quadrupling your audience from last March, it wasn't like we were small last March. I mean, a lot of you guys have been reading and watching OutKick videos for years now. To quadruple our audience from last March is crazy. I don't know if we can continue to grow at any kind of rate like this. If we did, we'd be like 2 or 3 biggest sports site on the entire internet over by next year. I don't know if we can do that. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know how much faster we can grow than we're doing right now. But over the last year, I've been incredibly proud of the work, of the talent, and of, frankly, so many of you for helping to share our content and ensure that we have the massive audience that we do. Did you see the reaction? I knew eventually the reaction would roll in because people were upset with how good the feedback was on my interview with Stephen A. Smith. And you guys know, OutKick is serving the 75 or 80% of sports fans who are not woke, right? Just totally normal dudes. I believe that I am the most normal guy on the planet. I think I like the most normal things. I think that there is nothing like extraordinary about, I'm just a normal guy, right? I think there's almost 100% chance that every single person watching this video, if you had a beer with me, you'd be like, yep, Clay is pretty much the most normal guy out there. And I'm not like crazy about it, but I think that's why OutKick is growing so much. And guess what? My conversation with Stephen A., and you don't just have to take it from me, go read all of the comments on YouTube of people reacting on Stephen A.'s page. This is not the OutKick YouTube, although I do love, as I always say, I love you YouTube subscribers more than anyone, more than TikTok, more than Facebook, more than Twitter. YouTube is where our audience is skyrocketing. But the Stephen A. interview was not posted on YouTube, the OutKick page. It was posted on Stephen A.'s page. Go read all the comments if you're doubting me, and see what the reaction was to my sit down with Stephen A. on Monday. overwhelmingly positive. People loved it. We didn't agree on everything, but they loved the idea of sitting down conversation between people who have disagreements, right? So a couple of different losers in sports media decided to take to Twitter because they were upset about how positive the reaction was. And one of them said, small sample size, but Stephen A. Smith's latest choice for a podcast guest has not been a huge hit internally, right? So what that means is this person in sports media, they're basically saying, oh, somebody reached out to me privately and they were upset that Clay Travis and Stephen A. talked. And then this guy who runs Awful Announcing got on Twitter and said in response to that, I didn't do a good feedback audit, but he does seem like he threaded, meaning Stephen A., the needle a bit there. I think in general, there is a thirst for let's talk it out discourse. Marjorie Taylor Greene on 60 Minutes. And I respect that. In my opinion, though, I think Clay has done enough to be disqualified on that front. Now, this is important, right? Because one thing that I have come to find in much of media is it is largely, totally, and completely artificial. In particular, the sports media is nothing like the average sports fan. So you have guys like this sitting around and arguing. Think about that. I think Clay has done enough to be disqualified on that front. This guy who runs Awful Announcing, which is a sports media site that exists to criticize people who are on television or radio or whatever else talking about sports. This guy believes that I have done enough, I'm reading directly from his tweet, to be disqualified on that front. That is, my opinions are so disqualifying that I shouldn't even be able to talk to Stephen A. Smith and have a conversation with him because this guy and the other guy say that they are upset about what the conversations are. And he also says, this same Awful Announcing guy does, Stephen A. has largely been paid and been playing by his own rules. ESPN folks have long understood and accepted this. His interview yesterday with ESPN's biggest antagonist has had a major impact on how he's seen internally. Bad teammate is the kindest of what I've heard. Now look, first of all, I don't believe in anonymous sources, okay? I tell you every day exactly what I think. You can appreciate and respect what I think. You can think I'm the dumbest person on the planet and that nobody should ever take anything I've ever said about any subject seriously. That's how the First Amendment works. I don't have any problem with it. But I put my own name behind everything that I say. Now, when I retweeted these opinions yesterday afternoon, this Awful Announcing guy immediately turned off all mentions. Nobody was allowed to react to what he was saying. But this is how they try to gatekeep sports media opinions. See, again, the data is reflecting it. You can just go look at how fast OutKick is growing. We are speaking to 75 or 80% of the American sports fans every single day. We are growing rapidly because we directly connect with the anti-woke sports subset. And then there's like 20% of the audience which lives on Twitter and is not representative. 20% is probably too high. That is extremely woke and that sees everything on sports through the prism of far left-wing politics. And that's like Awful Announcing. They have a tiny audience, but they are battling every single day for influence. And this is unfortunate, but a lot of executives are afraid of controversy. And so they treat these guys as if they are in some way representative of the actual audience. Well, they aren't, right? If they were, their audience would be huge and the OutKick audience would be tiny. It's the opposite of that. we are dwarfing and dominating so many other people in sports media because we are speaking to the vast majority of the American sports fan population. And they're actually being tremendously underserved by the marketplace right now. But these fake narratives, these, Stephen A. is under massive assault from people who work at ESPN. Well, first of all, come out publicly and just own it, right? Don't even have to attack Stephen A. If you hate me, step into the arena and actually step up to me and explain why you hate me and why you believe the things that I am saying are unacceptable and should not be distributed. Open forum for you. Not arguing against you being able to do that at all. Step into the Thunderdome. They won't do it. So the way the sausage is made is sometimes they reach out to these losers and they tell them something on a DM or they tell them something on a text. Maybe that happens, maybe it doesn't. But then they want them to come out and be the source, right? Like, this is a huge story. I'm actually surprised that they haven't been able to get more of a reaction from the Stephen A. interview on Monday. And I think the reason why they haven't is because they're actually troubled by how popular that interview has been. And so this is their narrative device to try to shift the way that it's talked about. Again, it's taking you a little bit behind the curtain to show you how sports media narratives are formed and how oftentimes artificial the basis for those narratives can be. But I think it's important because I always tell all of you, I always say, be super aggressive in the way that you consume media. In other words, anytime there's a negative article written about somebody, your first thought shouldn't be, this is an interesting article. It should be, who benefits from this article being written? Number one thing you should think, who benefits from an attack article being written? Because how the article came about is oftentimes far more interesting from a narrative perspective than something that someone writes in an article. Just FYI, I'd encourage you to just think aggressively about the way that media narratives are developed.